All right, welcome back to the show. So, Team Errol Spence lets Terence Crawford know, responds to Bob Arum actually about Terence Crawford and says, "Look, man, you need us. It ain't the other way around." In response to Bob Arum claiming that Errol Spence Jr. will not have a successful pay-per-view unless it is against Terence Crawford. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, man. We are living in a good time of boxing, man. This second half of the year is going to be absolutely terrific. It's been terrific so far, man. Ever since the Jamal Charlo leading into the Jamal Charlo and Jermell Charlo doubleheader, and now we've got a fight this weekend coming between Vasily Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. I do believe in the November time frame, we're going to have Terence Crawford versus Kell Brook that I'm looking forward to. And obviously, we got Errol Spence Jr., the Gervonta Davis, Leo Santa Cruz. You also have the Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia fight. So in preparation for this next fight that's coming up this weekend, which is Teofimo Lopez versus Vasily Lomachenko, Bob Arum was on Blue Blood Sportstv and gave a quote, was asked a question about the Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford situation. And Bob Arum, in that conversation, I did a video about that yesterday, and now I'm going to give you what the response was from Derrick James, who was the trainer of Errol Spence Jr. But in that conversation, Bob Arum said that he was not optimistic at all about the PBC's upcoming pay-per-views. And specifically, he talked about the Jamal Charlo doubleheader, which everybody else thought did was a great show, right? Great show. Great card, great fights. People had been saying it was between 150,000 pay-per-view to 250,000 pay-per-view. We don't know, but Bob Arum comes out with a number that sounds a lot like Rick Glazier, if you're familiar with the Glazier guy, which he said, we think it did around 70,000 pay-per-views. Well, that makes sense because Bob Arum probably thinks it does somewhere around 150,000, but he decided, let's just cut it in half and then subtract 10,000. And yeah, that's the number that I'm going to give out there and try to sell people on the story that the PBC pay-per-views have failed, right? So anyway, he does that, right? But he says that, hey, and then he talks about the Errol Spence Jr. Danny Garcia fight and says, look, man, Terence Crawford is not going to be able to, Errol Spence Jr. is not going to be able to have any real successful pay-per-views during this pandemic, right? During the time when money is really tight on people, unless he fights somebody that is an extraordinary competitor, right? And he said the only person that fits that bill is Terence Crawford. So Errol Spence Jr. cannot be successful on a pay-per-view without Terence Crawford, right? So when Derrick James, who came on the channel, and I invite you to go back to Fanon Live, the one that we put up yesterday, it was about a 35, 40-minute interview with Derrick James, who's the trainer of Errol Spence Jr. I enjoyed the interview. I think if you listen to it, you'll enjoy the full interview. But what he said was, when I asked, I said, hey, so Derrick, what do you think about what Bob Arum said? Man, he turned to the side, started kind of laughing a little bit, and he said, look, Bob Arum has got it backwards, okay? We do not need Terence Crawford to sell a pay-per-view, right? He's like, we've sold it with Danny Garcia. We've sold it, with Mikey Garcia. We've sold pay-per-views with Sean Porter. Now we have a pay-per-view with Danny Garcia, and there's multiple other people that we can still do them with. We have Manny Pacquiao. Now I'm paraphrasing, right? There's Manny Pacquiao, because I did ask him if he thought the Manny Pacquiao fight was a viable, was possible, and he's like, yeah, we'd love to do it, and yeah, we think that he would do it, right? I don't know if he really thinks that he's going to get in there, but they're open to that fight too. And there is a chance Manny Pacquiao might just change his mind and decide to man up and fight Errol Spence Jr. But, he's got plenty of options, man. They've got options at 154 pounds for Errol Spence Jr. It's Terence Crawford that does not have the options. It's Terence Crawford that already has a 50,000 pay-per-view against Victor Postol, and had a pay-per-view against Amir Khan that Top Rank wouldn't even talk about the numbers for. right? And Terence Crawford is the one whose numbers, the viewership is dropping on ESPN as time. The longer he's on ESPN, the more his ratings drop. And that is obviously not because of the talent of Terence Crawford, but because of the interest level in Terence Crawford by ESPN, the network, and by Bob Arum, the promoter. So I don't believe that it is Terence Crawford's fault that Terence Crawford is not, some wildly popular guy. He is with me. He is with a lot of the people on my channel. We never miss him. But I mean, Derrick James was like, man, come on, man. That is just, that's ridiculous. But let's look at some of the things that Bob Arum said. So Bob Arum says that, that these pay-per-views are going to flop. Now, when people say that, because people have been saying that about, not just about the pandemic, the pandemic pay-per-views, the PPPVs, right? The pandemic pay-per-views that are going on right now, the triple PVs. Man, I should quote that, man. Somebody that is better with coming up with catchphrases should come up, throw an extra P on that pay-per-view, because that PPV, right? Pandemic pay-per-views are pretty much being put on to alleviate budget constraints by the networks, right? Which will allow you to have a better fight because you're willing to put some money out against higher level guys. But what Bob Arum doesn't appreciate when he says that there's this pandemic and people don't have the money to spend is that, Terence Crawford's fan base, Errol Spence Jr.'s fan base, and Danny Garcia's fan base, they're used to financial hardship. Very used to financial hardship. In fact, I would say that if Danny Garcia's main fan base are urban Philadelphians, do you say Philadelphians? Urban citizens of Philadelphia, right? The citizens of Philadelphia, and a large Puerto Rican fan base, I would suspect that there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in the United States that know how to get by and buy things that they really, really want, even though they don't have a lot of money. Same thing with black people in the United States. They find a way, even though, traditionally, we ain't the richest people in the country, but we sure do find a way to have some nice Jordans on our feet when we want them. We sure find a way. House may be raggedy, but the Cadillac out front will be shiny. Okay? When you go through generation after generation after generation after generation of being in the economic lower class, you figure out as a group that if you're really going to want something nice, you're going to have to sacrifice more than other people wouldn't necessarily have to get something nice. Okay, but since life and art and beauty is part of why you have the human experience, people seek out art. People seek out entertainment. It is the reason why they work. People who are big-time boxing fans work so they can watch boxing, in part. Obviously, also to feed themselves, also obvious to do that. But there is a saying that, that Marxists, this is associated with Marxism, so I know that might, really upset you guys. But there's a concept that says that you are what you do. You are what you do. Your job, your occupation is what you do every day. And then actually that is the definition of occupation for occupational therapists too. It is what you occupy your time with. People earn a living from their jobs, but they want to occupy themselves and want to feel rewarded and feel like they're working for a reason. So they find the different things that entertain them and they buy them. And in the communities that I'm talking about that will do that with sports. You think that there are people in the projects they never bought a pay-per-view? There might be 30 people in the house, but the pay-per-view got bought and there's somebody in there watching it. It's just what it is. So I think that is just a fundamental misunderstanding of the fan base of the fighters, right? Now, when you're talking about there being a $50 million deal or something like that, a guy making $100 million, $200 million, yes, for the Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao level of things, yes, you do need those casual fans. You do need those people who really may not be trying to, spend $75 just on a regular one. But if you're talking about just trying to offset and alleviate some of the internal budget, the budget pressures that you have, for the networks, man, why not? Then anyway, Bob Arum is just tripping. Now, what Bob Arum said about Errol Spence Jr., though, and Terence Crawford and them wanting to make a fight with Fox, be careful, Bob, because your boy Terence Crawford your boy Tyson Fury just backed out on a deal that was established between ESPN and Fox. So, who knows whether or not Fox will be amenable to doing that again on a guy like Terence Crawford, who's just not very proven as far as bringing people to the table, because neither was Tyson Fury. And you see what Tyson Fury did to him. Just turned around and walked out. But that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.